Thank you all for joining Tocsin Magazine's State of Rochester. Today, we have several guests to come in and talk to us about several issues that's impacting our community. The first topic we have Kelly, and she will be our first introductory. Kelly, can you tell us who you are and why you're here?
My name is Kelly Lalonde, and I am a secondary English teacher in the Rochester City School District. And I'm also a kind of journalist that brings to light stories of people in the education field.
Okay, Barb G.
Hi, I'm Barbara Grosh, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters. And I'm just here because I want to hear what people have to say. And if we have time at the end, I might like to pitch a couple of things we're holding this coming week.
Great. Barbara Brody.
I'm Barbara Brody. I'm a retired psychiatric social worker who used to work in juvenile justice and in the schools at RCSD as a sub, which was an experience. And currently I'm working on trying to get the school district to do something about identifying kids early for dyslexia.
Oh,
Fred?
we need to talk.
Good evening. I'm Fred Tanksley, part of the Take It Down Planning Committee. And I apologize for the moving around. I'm trying to find better light in the room so that you could see me.
Right, you're dark.
But yes, I enjoy these conversations that we get together and share ideas and get the chance to get different perspectives and then broaden my own information base about different issues and topics surrounding Rochester.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start out with Kelly because we need some updates on what's going on in the schools. It still seems a little crazy. They had this forum over the weekend. Fill us in on what's going on and all the craziness.
Well, it's still crazy. So that's a given. There was a forum over the weekend. Unfortunately, I had a family commitment and I couldn't be there, although I heard all about it from the people who were there. And the superintendent, held a forum at Franklin. I did hear that some groups found their groups really productive, that some connections were made. I mostly heard from parents, from teachers, and from some outside agency people that I know that there was a lot of blame going around. It's this person's fault. It's this person's fault. And there are a lot of people who want to help, but the structure of the district is so disorganized is not even the word for it. I'm not really sure. The structure is so broken at this point. It's really, we have parent volunteers who want to volunteer, but there's a process, right? And then there's outside agencies that want to volunteers, and there's a process for that. And it's like we're in crisis and we're being hampered. There's no help coming because of the process. You know what I mean? So the general overall take that I got, and I mean, there's at least 15 people who communicated with me, was disappointment. It was a lot of like, we held a meeting to hold the meeting and get some good ideas, which is pretty typical for RCSD, sadly. So it's very dysfunctional. That's the word I was looking for. So there's a lot of dysfunction. There's still a lot of, the students haven't changed and the environment hasn't changed. So we're still in crisis mode when it comes to safety of students and teachers. So yeah, that's where we're at. I know that Barbara had a question. And
yes, Barb, I don't know where she went.
Yeah, it's okay.
There she is.
My question was, I saw that letter, so I don't know when you want to talk about that. And also, is there no protocol whatsoever to deal with the child who needs help?
Well, so there are protocols, but this is where it falls apart, right? People have to implement the protocols, and it's just not being done. So it might be being done depending on your principal. Once it gets past the principal, though, at a district level with the child who's clearly needing help, right? And we're talking about somebody who is acting out in a violent manner, not just your run-of-the-mill kind of kid acting like a kid. What often happens is it gets to district level, and because historically, and I will put this out there, we have suspended Black men and Hispanic men at a much higher rate than white males. There has been, at least as long as I've been in the city, which is 15 years now, a reluctance to go past the principal level, which is where you get the reluctance to suspend or place an alternate programming. And a lot of our alternate programming is gone. We're missing $98 million right before COVID hit. And so in order to make up that money, quote unquote, a lot of the special programmings that we had are no longer exist. So there are protocols, but people have to act on the protocols. Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah, but I have a question. Years ago, when I was working at one of the schools, it had to go downtown to a hearing officer, and the parent brought an interpreter and whatever else we needed. And then they measured out the whole thing, and the kid was out of school for months. And finally we decided that the child, what they thought the child said, who doesn't speak English, to what the child did say, didn't jive.
Well, so there was a hearing process, right?
Yes.
So we're in very rare cases. I've only been a part of one, actually, and in the interpreter role as the SL teacher, making sure all the kids' rights were followed. It very rarely gets to that hearing any longer because that's a long-term hearing. So a principal can suspend, I believe, Mr. Patterson, a principal can hold the kid out of school for 5 days pending the long-term hearing, but the review to actually have the hearing is where this all stops now. The district is very reluctant to even hold the long-term hearing.
Fred,
oh, sorry.
I
just want to say, when you foil them on the long-term hearings, they'll say that they can't tell you how many they have because it's against privacy law, which I'm not exactly sure that it is, but they will not tell you how many they actually will hold.
Well, numbers are not privacy.
Right, that's my response every time. But, they make my foils really hard to get. So I'm sorry, Fred. I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just wanted to just make a point from my observation is that I know you were talking about how there were other groups and there were individuals and parents that wanted to be involved. I don't think a lot of times we look at the opposite side of this from a district standpoint, and this is no way agreeing. It's just that when we have pedophile teachers, sex offender teachers. And so when you throw in another layer of people into the mix of dealing with kids, it can get, it can backfire and be worse than what you intended originally. And it only takes one incident for something to happen to somebody's child. And, it just, whatever the good that was intended turns into something very, very wrong. So I just wanted to put that out there, because no parent wants to get a message from the school that their kid was accosted or sexually assaulted or anything by a parent or organization that sent somebody into the building.
You're absolutely right. And those are the processes that I'm talking about, right? You need to be fingerprinted. You need to be those are in place. They have for a reason, right? And that's the reason, in order to work with children. I mean, and so they very much are, so I absolutely agree with you. I don't want just anybody showing up to, also we need to make sure they're the correct people. I mean, that's that they're used to dealing with children, let's say, or an organization that this is something they work on and they've been fingerprinted, and sharing that. School districts don't share that information. So you need to be fingerprinted for the school district. That's another weird state privacy law thing that I found out about. But you need to specifically be fingerprinted and background checked and all of those things to work with children. So yes, you are absolutely right. I wouldn't want a random human in there either.
But they allow a lot of agencies like Jewish Federation and other agencies I've worked with, because you're a tutor and you're not alone with the child. They don't do any of that.
Well, that's good to know. We don't have a lot of tutors in the school that I work. I mean, we don't,
in the elementary school, we do.
You're right. Because there are outside agencies that go in the elementary. That's a little concerning. I get,
no, I don't know what's happened after COVID, probably all this.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. We have really strict policies in place for COVID, like even parents, that used to be able to volunteer, it can't come in anymore. And that's, I think, countywide. My daughter's school district, even my school district where I'm from, 2 hours away, don't allow anybody right now because of COVID. So that is probably a whole nother layer of something to throw it in there.
So Howard, did you attend the forum this weekend? I know someone tagged you in a live, but I wasn't sure if you were there.
No, ma'am, I did not attend.
Okay. All right. So we were just trying to get some feedback on what's going on in the school. Now, did you have any retaliation, Kelly, for anything, or have you heard anything else about the woman who was retaliated or had some issues? Any updates on that part?
Yeah. So sadly, I mean, we kind of knew this was coming, right? The other gentleman who was on the call, talks about how our social media is monitored. And anybody who really speaks out are monitored. And we have been. I mean, the superintendent of East and our superintendent have both said that Corinne, I'm actually me, which I find amusing, controlling the narrative and making sure that the narrative is negative. I published this one story and I've talked to you guys. I'm really choosy with who I talk to. So we've been kind of blamed for this negative effect. Although as far as I'm concerned, it was always there. It just is, people are finally starting to talk about it with some honesty. Corinne just did a segment on News 8, I believe, an update after the meeting. And she said, that she's being targeted. They keep trying to get her to stay home from work and she won't stay home from work. They keep saying that they'll say there's problems, but they won't use the word violence. And she particularly says, there is violence in our schools. We can prove it. And nobody will use that word. And every time we talk about trauma, we talk about the students. But yes, they're traumatized from COVID, from life experience. But we also have traumatized teachers now. And we have an unsafe environment for adults and children. So it's become what I believe the social construct that a school is a place where adults will tell you what to do and, you listen mostly. I think that whole social construct is gone now. I really believe that whether it's lack of consequence, lack of follow through at a greater level, that social construct that the teacher has some sort of authority at all is gone. And that any adult really in our schools has any authority, because in the end, the principals are even feeling that they have no recourse, because once they try to do everything in their power, it gets blocked by central office. So yes, the retaliation is there. There's tons of us who get some really nasty emails every day, and our social media is monitored and stuff. But Corinne was in it for the long haul. I asked her about it before I published her story. And if people can call me mean names all they want. I got used to that a long time ago. So, it's just, It's just, it's a little trying. It's a little exhausting, which is why I'm really choosy about who I talk to. And because I'm the vehicle, not the person in the story. But yeah, it's exhausting.
I understand.
What happened?
Fred?
I was
Oh.
going to ask, what happened with the letter that you mentioned
So
earlier?
the letter actually came out, I believe it's 2 weeks ago. I can split my screen. I'm on my husband's computer and I'm not great at splitting the screen. But you can search it up. The 4 unions got together. It was about maybe a week after the story broke,
Mhm.
and they gave a list of 12 bullet points, I think, to
Right.
address the violence in school. We've heard basically about one of the bullet points, which is the returning the police to the schools, which most educators I know don't love that idea. But what we're not talking about is the other bullet points, right? There was in the news one, and it would be to take the kids who are awaiting these long-term hearings or, fighting, having physical altercations in school and put them on remote learning until they can be reassessed. We can get the resources to put them back in the school environment. The superintendent came back and said that was illegal, which it's not. And the president of the principals union, Mr. Rowe, I believe his name is, wrote a really scathing letter back saying that our lawyers will be in touch because it's not illegal, and that she's refusing to come up with any solution to make the environment, that's the easiest solution to make the environment safer, to remove the child from, well, sometimes children from each other. Or from the adult, and not just sending them back into the classroom. So I've never seen the principals union. The principals union normally, I have to say, is not the strongest of the wording of the union. So I was really shocked. I hate to say that, but it's true. I was really shocked by that email. So when the principals union and all 4 of the unions, are saying you have to address this. It's unsafe for everybody in the building. And she comes back and just, kind of tables all of it. It's really disheartening. So that's what that letter was about, Barbara. It was about these 12 points of, it talked about mental health services.
All kinds. Yeah, they're excellent. It was excellent.
It was a very well comprehensive plan. And the very last bullet was police support where needed. And now that's become the focus of the letter, when the letter wasn't. That's not all that was contained in the letter, I guess, is what I want to make really clear. So
What do you know what the
Barb,
sorry,
other people involved.
I just want to ask what this follow-up was.
Go ahead.
What was the follow-up on the letter or anything else?
No comment.
Okay.
Barb,
I'm done.
no, don't be done.
I
Fred had his hand up for a while.
Sorry, Fred.
Fred.
I guess to me, I'm a little perplexed about all the talk about the violence and everything. And how we seem to be blaming everything on the pandemic when these issues were systemic prior to the pandemic. So, but now it's like the pandemic is the broad excuse for everything that is happening. These issues were happening for decades now, and they're just kind of like boiling over. And everything is now we're being this big push about mental health. All these issues are not mental health issues. They're just things that have not been resolved. And kids don't have no other way other than being violent to get adults' attentions, if I may say that. And even adults, to get the state or the city or the government's attention. It doesn't happen until something seems to be violent, then people will notice. But I think a lot of this is not so much as the pandemic or kids being locked up. They're just tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. of the same issues that they've been having for decades. And I think that, bringing in a bunch of psychiatrists or therapists or whatever name we want to frame it as is not going to solve the problem. We can talk about, we've been talking about this for decades and nothing has changed. And so conversation without action is not going to produce anything. We can bring a psychiatrist for every kid that's in the classroom, but if nothing changes, then I guess to me, it would seem like, it would be a moot point. And I don't get me wrong. I do understand that some people do have mental health issues, but we're talking about it now as though 90% of all the kids are having mental health issues. And I can't see, I really don't see that as being, I don't see it. And maybe somebody can give me some feedback to help me understand it more, but that is my perception and thought when I look at this whole picture.
If I can respond, so I absolutely agree with you. This is one of Corinne's points, like that she keeps saying our kids are traumatized from the pandemic, and she's like, we have gangs in our schools, like we've had them forever. Like you'll see that in the interview. I think Mr. Eagle just put one of the interviews in the chat. She says, I don't know why people won't say that word. Like the teachers know. I mean, I worked in Charlotte when Charlotte was Charlotte. Now it's something different. And we had gangs in the school and you knew who they were. I mean, half of them were my students because I worked with the Latino population. So I don't know why we don't say those words. And maybe it's because everything's just on fire all the time and we can't get past what's in front of us now, right? Like, and I will say for a teacher, I agree with you. And I think about this all the time. Like, what more could I do systemically, right? And Rochester was based on, I mean, even the roads were meant to cut the city in certain parts and things like that. I mean, just the structural racism in our school system is insane, right? I wonder, I know from the teaching point of view, honestly, like we do, is at least in my school, we try to address those things, but we're putting out fires constantly, and then it becomes survival and it doesn't become teaching, right? Like it becomes, and I won't even just say teaching. I mean, I'm talking about the whole system is right now surviving. And it's been in survival mode, but you'd have the ability to teach your class and have these great days like right now. And I'm not sure if COVID exacerbated by not having structured classes, why it being at home, something happened to make it a whole hell of a lot worse in school. And it's a lot of forces combined. And so I think we're all just really like deer in the headlights. Like, what do we do? And
well, how bad are these schools? Like, tell me what is really happening, because we hear it's bad. Tell us some stories.
I mean, the East High School coach he's been out for weeks now. Because he was assaulted. The football team coach was assaulted by a kid who came out of a youth injustice type of program, who's again not his student. And the kid they let him back in school after 3 days so that he won't come back. He was assaulted, like he was beat up so badly that he won't come back. And East, nobody wants you to know what's going on at East. So, but the guy's from my hometown. So that's, we went to high school. So that's that. I mean, I work at School 58, so it's World of Inquiry School, which was made in response to the racial injustice in the 60s. And technically it's supposedly one of the good schools. I mean, I got placed there, so whatever. We have, I don't know how many fights every day. I mean, and it's a K-12 building, and mainly it's 8th grade and 10th grade, which is weird. I don't know why. Those are the 2 grade levels. Every single day. I mean, every day. And we put kids in like in school suspension where they do work separated, but then those kids, there's only one room. So the kids are in a room together after
Wow.
so I could tell you stories from other places, but I mean, it's teachers, students, the one about Edison, the teacher had a black eye and there was no sub. And
No, tell us about that one. I don't know about the teacher.
That was at Edison. It was maybe a week after the Corinne story broke, maybe not even a week. I'd have to look at the calendar. But he got punched in the face at Edison. And it wasn't even breaking up a fight. I forget what happened. He was caught in the hallway. You know what I mean? And the kids kind of saw the adults when the adults got in. I mean, whatever. They're still swinging when the adults come, depending on who the adults are, and he got punched in the eyes. He had a black eye and he taught for the rest of the day because the kids had a big project. There was no one to sub.
Yeah.
And they had like canceled. I mean, we have no subs. I had 3 people quit in my building. I'm a union rep. I think I told you guys this. 3 people have already quit before November. So our science teacher is a sub in middle school. Our math teacher is a sub. Our special educator is a sub. So those kids aren't getting class. I mean, we got way horrible things going on with special ed because it's just a random body in there. And I've been teaching the ELA course, even though I'm an ESL teacher, because my teacher had to have emergency surgery and was out for 6 weeks. So I'm covering her class so they don't have 4 out of 6 teachers gone. So yeah, there you go.
Fred, is your hand up again?
Yeah.
Tell you about my experience.
Yes, it
in
is, but
school.
you can let Barb
Okay.
go first.
I was
No,
gonna
Barb,
say-
you can go because Fred went the last time. So
Oh, okay. I was going to talk about my experience when I subbed before COVID. And I was in the school of inquiry. And this one kid decided to say to me, "So what the hell are you doing here anyway? Just to collect a paycheck?" Meanwhile, he laid on the floor. He was a high school kid. Another one's got his feet on the desk. There's a woman sitting in the back of the room that just never intervened at all. And then I said, you just can't behave that way here. And I used to work in juvenile justice, so I use humor with them.
Right.
So I decided to call somebody. I had no idea who to call, no protocol. There was a phone, no number. Finally got somebody. The guy came up. He's the one that was security who didn't even talk to me in the morning because they told me to come for one thing and then they had me teaching Spanish. Anyway, the kid leaves the room. I don't see him for the rest of the day. He comes back late and apologizes. But I had no idea where the kid went. I had no idea where any of the kids went. They just left the room and that was it. I was also in 2 of the elementary schools where this 3rd grader was going to punch out a little boy who was 3 times bigger than her just because she was rattled about something or other. So I kind of said, "Well, honey, why don't you stand over here? And why doesn't he stand over there?" And then the teacher came, got the boy, but didn't get the girl. So I said, "Honey, you need to calm down before I can send you back to class." I didn't even know what class was. So security guy comes and we walk down the hall. I have no idea where we're going. And then I had a 5-year-old in another school who would fight. He would just try to bop these little kids. So then I said, who am I supposed to call for him? The assistant principal the first time, the security guard the second time, and then some other lady came who never introduced herself and took him. Each time he came back, he got a cookie, and then he came back to class. And I finally said to somebody, if this child hit these little itsy bitsy kids, what would have happened to him? He would have been found responsible for hurting another child at a 5-year-old level. And no matter what I did, no matter what I said, because I used to work in mental health, so I figured maybe I have some background in this. They wrote me a letter months later to say I was not a good fit for their school. So I never went back.
oh, wow. Fred?
Your turn.
again, don't take what I'm going to say wrong, but just think about it. We're living in a different time than when we were going to school or, in these situations. And I think as adults, one of the things that we do that's so detrimental is that we look at things from how we did them when we were that age. And things are totally different now, even when it comes to violence. People are looking at TikTok, and you can post a fight on TikTok, and I guarantee you within 5 minutes, somebody else is doing that exact same thing as it happened before. And one thing about, and I'm just going to say about violence, is that laws and rules are only there for those who are willing to obey them. Those who don't want to obey them, they mean nothing to them. And in any situation, if the consequence is not greater than the act itself, people will continue to do it. And until they find a medium that deal with kids and violence, not excluding the ones that have mental health issues, but those that don't, until they find that wherever that medium is, then its violence is going to always be rampant at this point. It is going to be rampant. And I want to say, Kelly, as a teacher, I sympathize with all of you as teachers, because you guys are drowning. And I mean, you can't I don't even see how you can teach. The kids have been out of school for almost 2 years, even though they've had the remote learning. That has been a sham. And so now, how do you start that up again? It's like a train that has been dorsal for 5 years, and now it's all rusted, and you want to get it and pretend like it's going to work like it did yesterday, and I take my hat off to you guys, but you got to be drowning. I really just, I sympathize. But as for violence, until something happens that the act, the consequence is greater than the act, kids are going to continue to do it.
Do you want me to respond, or do we want to go to Mr. Eagle? I don't.
Let's go to Eagle, and then you can respond to all of it after.
Thank you. I'll mute. Hold on.
Oh, thank you. Oh man, this is frustrating. It's a frustrating conversation. Part of why it's frustrating is because I hear too much anecdotal stuff. These separate situations. But clearly, this is a systemic issue and problem. And anecdotal solutions, ideas, do not solve systemic problems. They never have, they never will. It's not possible. But we have to be clear. I heard Ms. Lalonde say that she thinks about what she can do systemically. There's nothing anybody could do individually systemically. That's an oxymoron. If it's systemic in nature, then the solution has to be systemic in nature. And so when we talk about system, we're not talking about School 58, we're not talking about Franklin, we're talking about the Rochester City School District. That's the system. That's the system that has to be addressed. So it's just kind of frustrating. Just part of this, that I raised this the last time we had this conversation. Like Shanique shouldn't have to ask, or any of us shouldn't have to ask, tell me about the situation in the East. Tell me about the situation at Edison. Those need to be on blast. We all need to know about that. If a coach has been beat up at East, the whole community should know about it. But I'm curious as to why we don't. If somebody got punched in the face at Edison and taught a class with a black guy, the whole community, every time it happens, the whole community needs to know about it. That's important for a number of reasons. It's important for us to know just how serious and deep-seated the problem is. But why that's not being reported is potentially important also. So systemic racism was mentioned. But again, it's frustrating because of the way we talk about it. It just makes me wonder if we really know what we're talking about, and are we really thinking deeply about what we're talking about. This is not even just about Rochester or Buffalo or Syracuse or Utica or Binghamton or New York City or Detroit or Chicago. This is a national crisis. And of course, COVID has exacerbated it. There's no denying that. But as it has been said a number of times already, this deep-seated crisis existed before COVID. But of course, it's been exacerbated. But now you talk about systemic racism. Here's the systemic racism. Here's what we need to, in my view, really understand is that if these were white children, if these were middle-class white children, the response would be different at every level. The local response would be different. The state response would be different. The national response would be different. This is a national crisis that we're talking about. Rochester, if you place this in proper perspective and context, Rochester is like one example of what's happening across this nation. You can be certain of it. You can be certain if you're reading the reports and so you'll see that this is being reported in every state. And so the systemic racism is part of it is, and I say a major part of it is the lack of adequate response at the state level, at the national level, and so while Leslie Myers, in my view, is not up to the task, she's not up to the leadership task, in my view. I don't think she was even before this emergency. That's my view, just based on observing her and so forth, right? There might be stuff that I don't understand, but that's what I think I see. But she makes some legitimate points. The union is problematic. RTA is problematic. And the other unions too, who sort of follow Adam's lead, because their list is good. It's okay. That list is all right. Some of those things should be done, but that won't solve this problem. So they need to be part of the systemic solution. So Adam, with all his power, and NYSET, with all of his power, and AFT, with all of their power, they should be calling this out as a national crisis, but they're not saying anything. And so you see them react at a level that they want to get their teachers taken care of. That's what they get paid to do. That's what they're supposed to do. But that doesn't solve the deeper problems and issues. It doesn't. And ultimately, I hate to predict this, but I just predict it based on history. Ultimately, what we're going to see is they're going to try to arrest this problem away. They're going to target the young people who are doing the violence. And I believe it's a relatively small group out of the masses. They're going to find out who they are. Most of them are going to get locked up. And that's going to arrest the problem and give the appearance of a solution. But it will not be a solution. It's just a matter of time before something else sets off the next major crisis. So in my view, until we go to the root of this and really uproot it, the deep-seated individual institutional structural racism that is part of the public education system and was from day one, until we deal with it at that level, this will continue to reoccur. It will continue to reoccur. They are going to arrest this crisis. You can believe that. This is not going to keep going. Because if it does, there won't be no teachers in the school. They'll all be gone. They got to solve this. So it's just frustrating to watch, though, and the lack of response is really it speaks to the racism, how deep it is. I'll stop rambling.
Oh. No, I did want to respond to you in something Fred said. You're absolutely right. I mean, this problem has been going on forever. I do want to respond. I think, Mr. Eagle, you weren't on. The second thing I said was actually about anecdotal. The only evidence you can get from the district right now is anecdotal. I've put in, I don't know how many Freedom of Information Act requests, and they often deny them. So I've asked about the number of assaults comparative to other years, just the first 2 months. I've asked about long-term suspensions. I've actually spelled it out: assault on teacher, assault on student, and what was the consequence. I've asked how many long-term suspensions have been issued in certain time periods. And every time the Freedom of Information act has been, or request has been denied. So we all should know about these things. You're absolutely right. The entire community should know about East High, and their coach that is out of school and not going back, at the moment. We all should know about what happened at Edison. We all should know about all of these things. It should be very transparent. There's a number of things that happen that make it not. The first level is that even if you use the law in your favor, they won't give you the information. They'll cite privacy, even if it's not. But getting a lawyer, like, I'm not going to go get a lawyer. I have the money to challenge that just as a citizen, right? So there's one. So they'll deny it at the district level. The other thing is looks and optics. I mean, Corinne, myself, the other gentleman that was on the phone call last week or 2 weeks ago, or when I was here, have been, put under investigation for we don't know what. I mean, I myself was. And then let go when I started talking about it publicly. Corinne has been asked to stay home. Any teacher who kind of brings this up, although we do have a very powerful union, like Howard said, and in other aspects, their job is to protect their teachers. Teachers still are afraid because they're being monitored. They're being told to stay home. You can be put under investigation and for weeks and weeks and weeks and sent to the rubber room. I mean, now we're just at home, and never know what you were sent for. So I hate to call it a witch hunt or things like that, but all of these things contribute to the reason that we don't know this information. So there's the district actively not giving the information out. And then should teachers be the ones like sounding the alarm bells? I think we finally are. I think we had, and this is my personal opinion, and this gets to Fred, and then I'll let you talk. My personal opinion is that a lot of us had this year where we were out of school. Right. And I've worked for the district for only 15 years. It's my second career. And I love my job and I love my class, and I really dare say I'm real good at it. Right. And I normally don't have behavior problems for a number of reasons, but I think we spent a year at home and remembering that there are greater things than our jobs. And that maybe our job wasn't worth it. And I hate to say that, but the amount of people who have quit and citing their own, like the amount of teachers citing their own mental health. One of the teachers who quit in my building started being bulimic. Like, I mean, just the stress that we're under because of the fires in front of us, and which, is why the systemic problem, we're kind of like, I think we had a year off to get out of survival mode. And now that we're back in it, we're like, this isn't healthy. And it's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for the kids. I mean, I think it's a real big reckoning that where before we were just existing in survival mode for the entire time, right? We're existing in a system that sucks, frankly, and that is terrible. I think the break, I don't know. I think the break really, really did something to teachers. Fred, I see your hand. I'll stop talking.
Yes. Actually, no, this particular question I'm directing to Howard, because I just want to know what in his view would be the answer to this question. And the systemic racism piece, seeing that the whole system was built the way it is, how would you see changing the systemic problem without stopping the train? So we've seen what stopping education has done to the kids just during the pandemic. So if we have to stop the train I'm using train, so to speak, but if we have to stop the education system to revamp it, how much damage would that do Or is there another way to tackle the systemic problem without just totally derailing the train? If I'm making sense, or I can try and clarify more if it's not making sense, the question.
No, I think I understand. I believe I understand what you mean. And if I don't address the question you're asking, let me know. But there's no stopping the train. We have to continue to educate to the best of our ability. We have to continue to educate, but we have to be honest, and we have to accept that this system was never designed to educate poor children of color in particular. And if we know that, then we have to ask, while we continue to educate to the best of our ability, we can't stop the train. There's no sense in having that discussion. We got to keep trying to educate, but we got to make fundamental, deep-seated, widespread, broad-based change. And so what we have to do then is identify specifically what is it that needs to be changed? What rule is it? What law is it? What policy is it? What procedure is it? Right? What mechanism is it? We have to identify those things specifically, and then go. So you know Fred, I believe you know my answer, because I only know but one way to answer this. We actually need a movement, and that is not rhetoric. We need a critical mass of people who work together on an ongoing, consistent, deadly serious, truly collaborative way to identify specific problems, specific goals, and then develop together strategies and tactics to achieve those goals. And they have to be measurable. It can't be abstract stuff. It has to, we're gonna change this. There's not gonna be anybody else ever, and this is just off the top of my head, bringing a cell phone into a building again. No one's we're gonna change that. We're gonna outlaw cell phones in buildings unless it's, some critical emergency where somebody has to have one. And I'm just using that as a small thing, but that's a real thing though. That's a real thing that I believe would make a difference, but it's small compared to the larger issues, right? But the point I'm trying to make is we can measure if people have cell phones or not. It's not abstract. If you're not supposed to have them, then nobody has one except those who are exceptions, right? You know what I mean? So I'm talking, it's got to be concrete, real, and measurable. And Fred, that has to go on. It needs to go on all the time. Even most of the work probably needs to be done in the summer when the children are not there, right? This needs to be ongoing. You know what I think of? I think of the Marshall Plan. You know, the plan they used to rebuild Europe after World War II? That's the kind of plan we need. I think something like that, something along that scale. That's why I say, like, this is a national problem. We're treating it like it's some little local event. This is a national problem. It should be a national emergency. It should be a national crisis. That's how it should be approached. And I would say this again. If these were not poor children of color and poor families of color, the response would be different. Why do I say that? Because I just think I know everything? No. When I look in history, that's what I see. That's what I see in history. When white people are in crisis in this nation, the response is different than when poor Black people in particular, and not just Black people, but Black people especially, but people of color, poor people in general, but poor people of color in particular. So it's, and see, this is why when I talk about the union flexing this muscle, this is the kind of, what I'm saying is what the union should be saying, I think. That's what NYSET and RTA and AFT and what's the other one, UFT, they all should be saying this. They all should be making this demands. Let me just say this about the thing you said, Miss Lalonde, about knowing about what's going on. I know, I hear you about foiling information and so forth, but I believe that the way we should be finding out is the same way we're finding out about the teacher at Franklin. The teacher at East should be telling us. The teacher at Edison should be telling us. And the union should be saying to them, we got your back. You can say it. They're not going to target you, not unfairly. We're not going to allow that. That, to me, that's what the union should be doing. The union is negligent in that sense, right? The union should not allow for witch hunts. It's not supposed to. That's part of their job. And so why they're not taking that position is suspect. That's suspect to me, you know, and nobody really talks about that. But Fred, I hope I answered your question, right? There's no sense in us talking about we're going to stop the train, and that's just impossible. We got to try to educate the best we can under these circumstances, while at the same time trying to change the circumstances. What do they say? You have to, what is it, jump on the train while it's still rolling, or however that goes. I don't know. But yeah, that's my thinking.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this conversation up. So any final thoughts on this? We're going to get into the discussion about former police chief LaRon Singletary announcing that he is running for U.S. Congressman as a Republican. So any final thoughts before we go into that? And if anyone wants to, jump off or they can't participate in this part of the discussion, that's fine. Just, but
I just want to say thank you, and that I thank you all for being respectful and listening to just, one teacher's kind of story. And just, I really love participating, and I would love connecting with any of you. I am a mom to a small child, so I often have to juggle those duties. So I do have to go for the 7:00 portion. But I just wanted to say thank you. And I really appreciate it. Like I said, I only choose to talk to very small people because I get exhausted with the bigger issues. Like Howard said, I get real tired of I just do. So I feel very comfortable and very thankful for all of you. So
thank you. Definitely. And you're always welcome. Anytime you have an issue, let us know. Let me know. Email me and jump on. Hopefully we'll be doing this each Sunday. Who knows, right?
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to say I really appreciate all of you. So
thank you. Thank you for joining us.